The Wright brothers have been working on airplanes for years, and they discovered something. Orville Wright said, "From the beginning we have employed entirely new principles of control." They had to change many things to get their plane just right. And in 1903, in Kitty Hawk, the Wright brothers changed history forever. They flew the first successful plane. In their first success, their plane flew for 3.5 seconds. It may seem like nothing, but that 3.5 seconds will revolutionize flight forever. It will start the process of building planes that can be used to take down other planes, also to carry passengers to locations. Not long after their first flight, they got the plane to fly for 12 seconds, then 15 seconds, and then finally 59 seconds. In 11 years, the airplane will be used in war. This is the first time the planes will be used in combat. But nothing like that would ever have happened without the Wright brothers in 1903. World War I started on June 28, 1914, when Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austria-Hungary throne, was assassinated. Then Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. This was the start of the war. The war included 40 different nations. Nations fought from every continent, but most of the fighting occurred in Europe. This was the First Worldwide War. Wars in this time period were fought in trenches. Infantry would dig trenches and wait until they were ordered to run and attack the enemy in their trenches, or wait until they were attacked. Sometimes it would be weeks until the infantry fighting actually occurred. The airplanes helped stop this because the planes could fly over the enemy troops. Then they could tell the officers where the enemies were, and also the planes could drop bombs into the enemy trenches. This totally changed the way war was fought. It also sped up the war, because there would be no waiting and no more sitting in trenches. At the beginning of the war, officers decided to use planes to spy on the enemy troops' movement. So the land units were prepared for the enemy. Also, the pilots would photograph the terrain so the troops could find a good defensive position. Also, the photos were used to tell the soldiers in the trench where the enemy troops were and what to do about it. These early planes were two-seater planes, one seat for the pilot and the other for the observer. During the very beginning of the war, the French and British flew right over the Germans without any problems. The Germans had no planes, so the Germans had to start to build planes to prevent Allies from spying on them.
Many pilots were ex-athletes, ex-racers, or young men that wanted to fight for their country. The average age of a pilot was 20. Being a pilot was not easy. Every time you went up in the air, there was a significant chance of never returning. In April of 1917, the life expectancy of a British pilot was only 17.5 hours of combat flying, or 3 to 6 weeks in active duty. In May of 1918, the Germans were losing 1 out of every 7 pilots every month. If a pilot returned from a mission, they would be greeted by their squadron mascot. Squadrons had bears, lions, monkeys, and other exotic animals. The Lafayette Escadrille, an American group's mascot, were 2 lion cubs. Pilots on both sides of the war respected each other. If a pilot was shot down, sometimes his killer would drop flowers on him. Also, the other nation may have a funeral for an enemy soldier. Gotthard Sachsenberg, a World War I pilot, says, "For seconds, I forgot that the man across me was my enemy. It seems as though I was sparring with an old comrade over our own airfield." The first aces ever were Oswald Bolacki and Max Immelmann, who were both Germans. To become an ace, a pilot would have to take down 5 enemy aircraft. To become an ace of an ace, you would have to destroy over 40 planes. Very few pilots became an ace of an ace. Only 31 pilots in World War I ever became an ace of an ace. Aces were their country's heroes. Trading cards were made for every ace in their country. The children would trade them. Sometimes a pilot would be given valuable items such as gold watches for every kill they got. World War I planes revolutionized flight forever. Some say when war comes, we grow the most. When war comes, everybody is trying to make the better machines. This caused airplanes to change and become faster, stronger, and lighter more quickly than airplanes would have changed without war. And whoever has the newest and the best technologies will win the war. World War I planes were the first time that planes were used for military. Before the war, no one put machine guns on their planes. At the beginning of the war, planes could go up to 6,000 feet. And at the end of the war, some planes could go up to 20,000 feet. Towards the end of the war, oxygen masks were used because of the high altitude. This is another example of how World War I airplanes revolutionized flight forever. At the beginning of the war, planes only had 50 to 75 horsepower, which was later replaced with very strong, supercharged engines that had 400 horsepower. Cloth skin plates were replaced with metal skin plates. At the beginning of the war, airplanes could only carry 1 to 2 crew members, but later in the war, 8 to 10 crew members could fit in some of the bombers. Also, after the war, airplanes were used to deliver mail. Since airplanes have evolved so fast that it was possible to take a lot of things somewhere fast before the war, it would take too long, and not enough mail could come in each plane. Also, airplanes were used in shows. In shows, pilots would do acrobatics or stunts. Because of World War I, those things were possible.